Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Fundamentalists podcast. This is episode I have no idea.
Yep.
I'm Elliot, and this is a podcast about life and how to explore different ambiguous parts of it and how to find life before death.
There you go.
And this is a podcast with one of my best friends in the world and one of my favorite people, Dr. Peter Rollin. What's your doctorate in again? Or doctorate?
My doctorate's in kind of philosophy, continental philosophy.
Continental philosophy.
Yeah.
Cool. For people who don't know what that is, what is continental philosophy, and why is that a differentiation from the other one?
Oh yeah. A lot of people don't know that. So there's kind of a divide between analytic philosophy and continental philosophy. And analytic philosophy is more kind of loosely based on kind of the hard sciences. Looks a little bit more, it's a bit more mathematically based, logically based. Continental philosophy is a bit more interested in kind of the human dimension of existence.
So continental philosophy is like what people think of when they think of philosophy?
Yeah, and then a lot of people go into philosophy thinking it's going to be that, and then they find themselves in analytic philosophy, and they're like, that's what happened to me actually back
really?
in the day. Yeah.
And you were just like, this is too boring?
Yeah, I mean, I did it for a while. I didn't mind it.
This isn't depressing enough?
Yeah, I was like, what's going on? And there was a lot of trolley problems, a lot of that kind of stuff. And I wasn't that interested. And then I discovered, thankfully, my university had both departments. That's very rare to have continental and analytic, but my university did. So I moved across.
What's the pie chart of like analytic versus continental? Like, is continental philosophy like 80%, 20%? If you were to get all the philosophers in the room,
oh yeah.
Who's the cool kids?
He's got more people.
Yeah.
Well, definitely the cool kids are the continental guys.
Well, for sure.
Yeah, they're the smokers with
freaking
their
nerds in analytical philosophy. Yeah, they're the Freudian.
They're the Parisians with their triple espressos.
Ooh, beautiful.
But it depends what country. So in America, most philosophy departments are analytic. But if you go to France, I would say most are continental. So continental philosophy is not completely geographical, but America and the UK tend towards analytic philosophy, whereas France, Germany, Italy.
Do you think that there's, and we'll get to the subject of this podcast, by the way, very soon, which is appropriately on time. So we'll get to it in a second. But do you feel like with the emphasis on analytical philosophy that it has had an effect on like sociologically? Like, is America a slightly different country at all as a result of being more analytically philosophical?
Yeah, or that the American culture has just been more conducive to analytic philosophy. Either way, yeah, I think there is a connection. So analytic philosophy, and I'm going to try not to disparage it, just be very...
Which is the greatest thing to say before you... Because there's nothing now that you can say that's not going to be... It's basically like, I'm holding my tongue.
Yeah.
So people are like, you're holding your tongue over something.
Oh dear. Well, yeah, I do read some analytic philosophy, but it does tend to kind of like break society down into components, into functions. It looks at, so if you're going to understand a car and you break it down into its component parts, whereas continental philosophy is more interested in what's called Gestalt, which is, what we are in our subjectivity. Mm-hmm. So for example, you can understand a person by, breaking them down to their biological functions, their psychological functions, or their social functions.
Sure.
But you'll end up potentially missing what it is to be human.
Yeah, you dissect the bird and there's nothing left.
There's
and
no life.
You lose the magic, yeah.
So whereas continental philosophy tends towards trying to understand what does it mean to live and what does it mean to be a human subject, and that you can't dissect.
Yeah.
In fact,
you can, but it's very gross.
Yeah.
Very messy.
There's a philosopher I quite like, a guy called Gabriel Marcel, but he talks about the difference between problem and mystery. A problem is something that you separate yourself from and you look at and you dissect. And a mystery is a kind of problem, but it's a problem in which you are... it encroaches on your subjectivity. Mm-hmm. So you can't distance yourself from it. You experience it from within.
You're talking about sex?
Sex.
That sounds like sex.
Yeah.
I know what that is. That's sex. Cool. Well, also, a quick announcement before we dive into today's lesson. We have a subreddit, which I found this morning.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
You just texted me. That was great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in it.
I felt bad because on one hand, I was like, this is cool. And on the other hand, I was like, did I know about this? And I just completely forgot. But anyway, it's not very active. There's like 10 people on it. But if you are a listener of this podcast and you would like to offer up questions, suggestions, discussions, you can go to reddit.com/r/thefundamentalists, because I saw a post on the Valley Folk subreddit, because I like to check that because they're smart, and I saw a cross post and I was like, what is this? And people are making cool stuff. So thank you for people who are posting and making cool stuff. Whether or not it was a long time ago or not, it's still cool to finally see it. But yeah, go check that out, because we don't have like a Discord or anything. You have a Discord.
I have a Discord, but not for the fundamentalists.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
So the subreddit. I love Reddit. I've only kind of discovered Reddit because I'm old, but
yeah,
it's very good.
Well, are you willing to commit on camera to popping into the subreddit?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Because you can do longer posts there than you can on Twitter, because I know you don't like to respond to people on Twitter.
Twitter's too. I don't like Twitter.
Responding on Twitter is like one of the most nihilistic things you can do, because I feel like just Twitter itself sheds a bad light on people now. Yeah. I don't know why, but it's like anything that you're saying on Twitter or tweeting, I feel like it's just
but I don't think there's anything, if you know about a subject, you can't say something in 180 characters, or even in a string of tweets.
Yep.
If you know about a political thing, then you can't put it into words on Twitter. And then if you don't know enough, then you shouldn't bother as well. Like if you can make a tweet about something, I don't know, it just doesn't work. Yeah,
and also if someone's asking you a question, then you have to like take the time to really like analyze the question and be like, you're most of the time maybe asking the wrong question, and then you end up in a whole other it's a lot of energy for people to just get mad at you. But anyway, so feel free to join. We'll pop in there when we can. I think my username is Tweeter or something like that from I had like a Reddit account from the SourceFed days where I made some dumb joke. But hop on there if you would like. Today we're talking about time.
Yeah. By the way, another thing people can do, because I like this, is the comments on YouTube. And one of the comments on YouTube was somebody noticed that you were sitting on the blanket, and they were wondering whether there was a reason for it, because do you wet yourself or something like that?
That's very funny. No, Pete just decorates his place like a cool guy. So this is like one of those blankets that have been intentionally draped to look cool, but in a way that's supposed to imply that it just landed here. There's no way this blanket just landed here.
There,
you ironed it and you folded it.
And it's glued. It's actually glued on. So.
Yeah, I can't move it. That's very funny. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, this podcast is now on the Valleycast channel as well. So hi, everybody. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Hello. Time. Now that we've wasted so much time before talking about time, I want to do a game with you, Pete. We're going to gamify a little bit. I have a list of 10 quotes about time, and I want you to tell me whether they're true or false. And I want you to give me your knee-jerk reactions, and I'm going to get you in gotcha moments, and then we're going to talk about probably
true or false, as in whether they're whether they're true of time
or
not.
Objectively, and no, I want zero opinion. I want only no, you can say whatever you want. But I thought it would be fun to do and to think about time, because the idea of time has become increasingly comical in and of itself. Based on, I was talking to Joe yesterday. We talked for like 2 hours, and he was like, we haven't really talked for like 2 months. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. I thought you could have told me a week, and I would have believed you. So that's the inspiration for this particular episode. Joe Beretta. So, number 1, you ready?
Yeah.
This is from Leo Tolstoy, never heard of him, in a book called War and Peace, and I've never heard of it. And he said, the 2 most powerful warriors are patience and time. What do you think?
Wow. I thought I was going to have to guess who said it, but I'm glad I didn't have to guess.
Oh gosh, no! I could give a crap. Oh, I don't care who said what. But
so the 2 most
powerful warriors are patience and time. It's very cool because I like quotes that seem like they would be embroidered and like hung on a 20-something girl's wall in her apartment. Thoughts on that? You don't have to have any, by the way.
Yeah, because sometimes with a novel, then you've got to kind of ask yourself: so who's the character? Who's saying it? Why are they saying it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who's saying it, why they're saying it?
I do. Just off the top of my head, I would say Leo Tolstoy, the greatest humanist, put these words in General Kutuzov's mouth, and actually...
The greatest humanist, it said?
Greatest humanist.
Oh, wow.
You know it's a contest.
I didn't think he was a humanist. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, and actually it is a combination of two quotes, so they're just straight up lying on quote number one. In book 10, the general says, "But believe me, my dear boy, there is nothing stronger than those two. Patience and time. They will do it all." Later, he repeats this idea in his thought. "They must understand that we can only lose by taking the offensive. Patience and time are my warriors, my champions."
Yeah.
By the way, yeah.
So that gives context. It's a general, so it's about battle. It's about a military strategy.
Waiting out your enemy.
Yes, and waiting for the right time to strike.
Yes.
Patience and time. So yeah, so that kind of, I guess, as a great war strategist that I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are mostly war strategy here at the Fundamentalists. Always have been.
What do you think? Like, what do you think of that in terms of what you do in your work with Valley Cast, Valley Folk? Patience and time, is there a certain sense in which
I'm not ready to answer that.
Right.
I will answer that in time. But you must have patience in order to... yeah, man. I mean, that's the constant. That's the rigmarole you get into. The most powerful warriors are patience and time is a very... it's a very sweet sentiment, depending on where you're at mentally.
Yeah.
But I would disagree that that is a true statement.
Yes.
I would call it false. I think actually...
I would say, in an objective sense, kind of false. But in the context of a general who's saying about what are the important strategies, the idea that inaction is a form of action.
Yes.
And like to not move can be powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Hypothetically, patience and time are good. But I think also patience and time can be used as a crutch and as an excuse to enable fear. But it doesn't sound like that's what the general is doing.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
There you go. Very
Number
nice.
2. This is from Tupac Shakur, or no, Benjamin Franklin says, "Time is money." You like that one?
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
I think about that sometimes because I'm like, I'd like to make more money, and I do have a lot of time. So maybe I could exchange those things in some way better than I am. You're a philosopher. You think. Do you feel like when you're thinking, you're using your time to make money?
No, although funnily enough, that's kind of what I do now a little bit.
Yes, that is my job.
I know there's a couple of people I know who are very, very wealthy. And one of them said to me that because he can basically do anything, what becomes valuable is time. So basically, because it's not money, it's like a private jet or whatever.
Yeah.
And the reason for the private jet is because what's valuable is everyone gets 24 hours in their day. So how do you kind of maximize the amount of time? And he said, so basically one disappears, money disappears as the kind of thing that you're valuing, and time becomes the ultimate value.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The richer you get, the biggest benefit is being able to save time pretty much in any capacity. Like even having enough money that you can just blow on like Postmates is a great way to save a bunch of time. So it's like you're paying for not having to spend time doing what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late.
3 hours too soon than a minute too late. Who said that?
Billy Shakespeare. And the Merry Wives of Windsor.
Yeah.
The phrase is said by a character who suspects his wife's infidelity, but in fact it can be applied to any situation when you need to take a chance to change things. Better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late. I see. So I thought it was a quote about punctuality, but apparently it's a quote about infidelity. I get those two confused a lot. But it can be applied to any that I like more in that context than the first one. Than the warriors are time and patience. I like the better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late.
Yeah. He had a way with words. That's Shakespeare.
Dude, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but that Upstart Crow play is so good with David Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. I want to see that. I wonder if they'll put it on the TV or something.
Maybe, yeah. It's done now, obviously. Lost time is never found again. That's another one from Benjamin Franklin. I don't think you can really disagree with that. It's fine. They're not really this isn't too meaty.
You know, the only thing about that, lost time can never be found again. And you know, that's all about kind of like just pithy sayings. But there is maybe we'll talk about this, but the idea that you can actually redeem the past. You know, so if you meet somebody, for example, in the present, it doesn't just transform your present or your future, but it can also change the past, so the past becomes a kind of waiting for them. Or even in psychoanalysis, there's a certain weird sense in which you don't literally change the past, but you can kind of go back into the past and reinterpret it and change it. So,
man, dude, I've been on one about this crap lately, because it's so the simulation stuff and the weirdness that's happening right now across the board is so interesting in terms of like what reality is. And with past stuff, it really does seem like the past does change, and depending on what you do with your present, and it becomes like yeah, like you said, like you can look back on things and be like, it's why people always say like, I'm so thankful for that, because if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't be here. And I say that in a mocking voice, but I wholeheartedly agree with it. So yeah, I like that. I like Lost Time is Never Found Again, in the sense that it's Benjamin Franklin was wrong. You can't keep today's hour for tomorrow. We all know this is about the Lost Time is Never Found Again quote. He says, the article says, you can't keep today's hour for tomorrow. We all know that, but still tend to procrastinate. Benjamin Franklin warns that time is a scarce resource, and if it's wasted, it cannot be recovered later. This is why mindful planning and work on productivity are so important.
Is this from your like self-help book?
Might as well be, dude. Yeah. This is all self-helpy. Time is the most valuable thing a man can spend. We were just talking about that. You covered that. Well, okay, so before you said it, Theophrastus said it. Do you know who that is?
No, Phrastus. Okay.
No. Ancient Greek philosophy. It's known by its combination of merely theoretical thoughts and practical approach. Theophrastus understood time as an accident of motion that cannot be stopped or reversed, and he said that waste of time is the most extravagant and costly of all expenses.
No.
Yeah, but it's so fun. Time is the wisest counselor of all. That's fine, whatever. Unless you jump in if you have thoughts.
I got one that I don't know who said it, but I heard someone say that the days are long, but the years are short.
I wonder if we'll get to that. The days are long, but the years are short. Yeah, and that's really good.
Yeah, I like that. Like that's one of these are all kind of in context, but that one just captured something I thought was really interesting, because the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Ugh, it's such a mind freak. The key is not in spending time, but in investing it. I like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
I'll put that in my pocket. The key is not in spending time, but is investing it. Just one of those things. Change this word. Think of it this way. It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important. You got anything there?
Oh, that's quite good. I like that. It's the time that you've wasted on your rose that makes your rose so important. Yeah, that's good. It's partly looking at the idea that it's the investment in something that gives it a certain value, excessive value.
The sacrifice, as Todd McGowan.
Yep.
We used to mention Todd McGowan's book, Capitalism and Desire, about 4 times a podcast. We don't do it as much anymore, but for those who are interested in reading, I think it's really great.
It's a very good book.
I showed Grace Drive when we were in Palm Springs.
Oh, yeah.
She'd never seen it before, and I can forget certain things in my past, like how Drive has a, funny girl. Grace is a funny girl. Drive is such a fun movie when you're a dude in your 20s and you're like, hell yeah, like Ryan Gosling is so cool. But rewatching it, there's so much dead air between him and Carey Mulligan where they're just staring at each other. Do you remember that part of the movie? It's all of the first half of the movie. They stare at each other in total silence, and it was cracking Grace up and making me, like, in my like boyish sense, was like, don't make fun of my toys. Like, this is a cool movie. And then I was like, she doesn't know what's coming. It's gonna get super intense. And then I also forgot that she doesn't like violent movies at all. And so I was like, oh, it's gonna get so good. She's gonna love it. We're gonna just have a great time. And then that scene happens, and all people are getting shot, and I'm like, oh, and she's just, all of a sudden I look over and she's like hiding under the blanket, and she's like, nope. And I was like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to watch. But anyway, in the movie Drive, in that elevator scene, it's referenced in Capitalism and Desire, and we were talking about that a little bit, because I was like, the whole idea of that scene in the elevator in Drive, I guess, is that he's stayed the same as a character, but Carey Mulligan's character for the first time is seeing his dark side and seeing his like ravenous violence, and it sort of alters her horizon or something like that. I don't know if you remember enough of what Tommy Gunn talks about, but anyway, I was thinking about that with the sacrifice stuff and how like you sacrifice for an iPhone and you do it in such a way that you don't think about how it came into fruition because you can mentally like separate it from it. And I was thinking about that idea of like sacrifice gives something value across the board, so that would make sense that sacrifice.
Yeah. Have you seen by the way Only God Forgives, the kind of film after
I need to watch that because I've heard you rave about it,
but it's even more kind of drawn out. So
well, I have seen it.
Oh yeah.
But I remember watching it and just wanting it to be Drive and being like, I want him to beat somebody up, but I want to rewatch it now, knowing more about the philosophical stuff behind it, because isn't it like it's not like an Oedipal? It's an Oedipal.
Yeah, from what I remember, I thought that it was a very Oedipal kind of story.
It's because it's like an evil mother or bad mother or something.
Yeah,
it's very
over proximity of the mother and
over proximity.
Oh yeah, over proximity. Yeah.
So that was Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince. I'm so bad at pronouncing French names.
Me too.
This is the final one. You ready?
Okay, give it.
Punctuality is the thief of time. Oscar Wilde, The Picture of Dorian Gray. The phrase that looks like a joke for most of us is the truth of a complete hedonist. Oscar Wilde is being at his best. The meaning of his quote is that when you invest effort in someone else's comfort, like hurrying because someone is waiting, you sacrifice your own time that you could spend on much more pleasant things.
So say the quote again.
Punctuality is the thief of time. Does that just mean like that sucks. Don't be considerate of what other people are doing with their time because it's a waste of time to be nice to people.
Yeah, but he's what Oscar Wilde often does is he kind of like exposes our secret pleasures and our secret unconscious desires. So he's very good at that.
Right. So it's the Oscar Wilde version of the John Mulaney joke where he says canceling plans is the equivalent of shooting up heroin or something like that. Like the feeling of canceling plans is like heroin. When you have something to do and all of a sudden the plans get canceled, you're just like, oh, that's perfect. Oh yeah, I don't have to go out. It's like when we're doing the podcast and one of us, it's like playing chicken with us, where it's like, you want to do it? I can't. I'm really tired. Got it. You don't. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. We'll wait. But we're gonna be back.
Yeah, there is that pleasure of like, I can just relax.
It's wonderful. Yeah. So that was 10 quotes on time, everybody. Pete, did that alter your paradigm? Did that shake you to your core?
It did. It rocked me. Well, what is your experience of time during this lockdown period?
Good question. I mean, it's been all gelled together. I think it's pretty common. It's like yesterday's today and today's tomorrow. So I think I didn't know what day. Today, Grace came in and she's like, is it Friday or Saturday? And it's like, sometimes you ask that question and you're waiting for your own brain to like catch up. And you're like, oh, right, it's whatever. But it was a genuine moment of like, I don't know if it's, I was like, Friday. Like, and it felt like a guess. So what about you?
Yeah, everything's kind of, in LA as well, you don't have seasons. So every day is pretty much the same. And, you can lose track of seasons and time. And it all kind of bleeds into one.
How are you liking the weather? It seems to be mirroring it just feels so gross outside. Are you feeling?
I haven't been able to get outside. I hardly ever go out at the moment.
Do you want to? This is a side. You can cut this out if you don't want to talk about it. But do you want to talk about what happened?
Oh yeah.
I would love just to do a quick story time. So we're gonna do an intermission with story time, and I was in re-quarantined in Palm Springs last weekend, and me and Pete and our buddy Curtis did a Zoom hang. And you told us a story. What happened?
Yeah. Pete? So basically, not much exciting stuff's going on in my life, but there's a food truck across the road. So I go over to the food truck to get something to eat. And because you can't order from the food truck at the moment, you have to use a mobile phone. And I had to download something. And there was a guy, and he was like just 5 feet away from me, and he was mumbling at me, and he was swearing at me, and he was telling me to leave. And he was a tough-looking guy. But I just, I was too busy on the phone, so I was kind of ignoring it. But I knew he was there.
Big guy?
You know, not really, but same height as me, but very stocky,
sinewy, and just ready to rock.
Yeah. Like he looked like he's been through a few fights, you know.
Yeah, like he'll. Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm like, oh, listen, it'll be fine. It's only 6 o'clock at night, whatever, it'll be fine. And then I order, and it's going to take 10 minutes, and he's still threatening me, and he's telling me to leave.
What is he saying? He's telling you to leave
Yeah, he says, you got to get the fuck out of here, and, you know, you got to leave now, you know, like, you better start walking.
Really, can I have like 5 minutes? Can I just give me 5 minutes? I'm just waiting for my food.
Well, that's what I said. I said, listen, I'm just getting the food, you know, like so.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Just like, you know.
Yeah. Well, because I went to a really tough school. I grew up I went to a really, really bad school, and I always remember that the best way to avoid getting into a fight was to show no aggression and no fear. Just like literally none of it. So nothing like aggressive, but also zero anxiety, zero fear. So I was just looking at him, and I didn't feel worried anyway. It was like it was middle of, you know, it wasn't late at night.
Yeah.
But I was just going like, yeah, I'll just be nice, look him in the eyes, just go out waiting for my food. But they're like, it's going to take 10 minutes. So I think, okay, I'll go over to the shop. I'm going to buy something at the shop. So I walk over to the shop, and he starts following me, and he's about 3 feet now, like so close behind me. And so I walk very slowly to make sure he knows that I know he's there. And I go to the shop, and he doesn't come in. He waits outside. And the guy in the shop's looking at him going like, I'm going to call security. That guy's like on something.
Yeah.
So he does that. And I buy a couple of things, and then I leave the store, and he starts following me again across the road. And halfway across the road, I stop, and I look at him, and he stops. And then I walk towards the place to get my food. But I'm kind of making sure that he knows I can still see him through the corner of my eye.
Just out of curiosity, and if you could be as specific as possible, what food did you order?
I ordered, I think it was brisket, brisket thing.
You're not gonna walk away from that.
No, I'm not gonna walk away from that. So, but I kind of like decide, okay, I'm not gonna turn my back, so I better turn to face him and just, you know, confront him. So I turn to face him, I confront him, just go like, listen, mate.
Hey, bully.
It's all cool, just getting some food. But then you're very myopic, so I'm looking him in the eyes, and then I glance at his hand, and in his right hand he's carrying a saw blade.
Yeah.
Like,
there it is.
It's not just a blade, like it's a saw blade. It's 8 inches serrated blade.
Yeah.
So it's funny, it's just like, okay, so it's going, okay. I just look at him and nod, give him the man nod, and then just,
we are respectable gentlemen.
Yeah.
This has been a pleasant exchange. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. And then I decide I start walking across the road, just very slowly. It's as if I'm just passing him back to the shop. But as I'm walking, I notice the guy's locked the door because he's seen all of this, the guy in the shop. So I'm walking towards this shop door of this guy about 5 feet behind me with an 8-inch serrated blade. And I'm like, that door's locked. The guy's locked the door, looking out like this.
That's one of your least favorite doors to come across at a time like that.
But I'm wearing this cardigan, thick cardigan. So I just very casually take it off and very casually wrap it around my arm.
And I said this to you when we were talking, that is the street smartest thing I've ever heard of in my life, and I wouldn't even have thought to do that. Not in a million years would I think, wrap your clothing around your arm so you can use it as like a defense. That's pretty smart, man. So you were able to keep your cool, sounds like, really well.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I kind of like, you know, if you start running, it's like a dog or something. Like if a dog starts chasing you when you start running, it's like it's doing everything as if everything's totally normal. When a guy with an 8-inch serrated blade 5 feet behind is not normal, but you have to pretend it is.
Yeah, and think about the fear that's going around right now, just of seeing someone not social distancing and not wearing a mask. Like that alone is like, oh, I don't know. Or if you see like a crowded party in like a TV or, you know, TV show or movie or something, you're like, wow, that's like crazy. All those people together in that space now. But you, a philosopher living in downtown Los Angeles, left your apartment. Went down to get food out of a food truck, were almost murdered, and still had the ability to be like, it's fine.
Yeah. I did worry. The first worry was, this is going to be a long night. Because this is going to be a long night. Because I was imagining being in hospital, and I was like, oh, that's going to be all night.
Last place you want to go.
Oh yeah. I want to get my food and go to bed. But the lovely thing is, the guy unlocked the door as I was getting very close to it, and let me in, and then closed the door, relocked it. And at this point, a couple of security guys came around here, just kind of like patrol the area. They don't have weapons, but I don't think so.
Really, but they're enough to,
yeah. But it's like, keep your distance,
man.
But, yeah. So they talked to him, and I was able to run over and get my food.
It's such a funny image to just, you gotta get your brisket, and then you're meeting this guy head on with eye contact, keeping your composure. But then when it's all said and done, it's just so funny to imagine you in the elevator by yourself back up to your apartment holding a plastic bag with brisket in it, and then crawling into bed and watching TV and having just brisket on your belly and like having lived another day.
The brisket never tasted better.
Yeah, just the warrior returns home with his kill. Anyway, that's a fun. Yeah. I'm glad you're okay, because it's cool that you were able to handle yourself as well as you did, because I don't know that I could have been able to do that. So back to time.
Yes, I have a thought on time. So here's something that Søren Kierkegaard said, which I thought was interesting. I was reading him a few weeks ago, and hopefully I can do him justice, because this is only a small part of the book. But he talks about time, and he says that human beings don't live in time. Actually, we weirdly are not in time in the same way as other things. We actually live between time and eternity. We live in this weird space in between. So I thought I'd say a couple of things about that, see where it goes.
That's already, everything you just said is already better than all those stupid quotes, but maybe the quotes will get us quicks.
Yeah. So he says, right, so time, what is time? That's a difficult question, what is time? And I suppose maybe a physicist would say time is entropy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically it. The flow of time is the flow of entropy. And so a rock experiences time, it's in time, and over millions of years it gradually dissolves or whatever, right? Animals are in time. So what does Kierkegaard mean by when he says that human beings aren't in time? What he means by that is we're in history, and history isn't fully in time. So history, I think what he says basically, well, if time is entropy, and then eternity, if we define eternity as a singularity in which every potentiality exists simultaneously, right? Mm-hmm. So a singularity, a moment in which every potentiality, anything that can possibly happen, exists simultaneously. If that's a definition of eternity, then Kierkegaard is saying we live between those two. Eternity is what breaks into time and makes us what he would call temporal, but not in time. It makes us kind of out of joint with time. So and the reason why is because
punctuality is the thief of time.
There you go.
Thanks,
everybody. Yeah. Because time, if an animal's in time, it just does what it does. It's just a flow, right? Nothing changes. There's no history. History is whenever human beings come on the scene, creatures of language, and we can make decisions, and we kind of have possibilities. And so Kierkegaard calls this the atom of time. I think we can call it, if he was writing today, might call it the quantum of eternity. The quantum of eternity, which is at any moment in your life, which is just going along on tracks, right? So life is going on as per usual. You're doing valley folk, you're doing whatever.
You're in your loop.
You're in your loop. At any point, radical things could change. Anything could change. Now, you don't feel this in your everyday life. You just go along and you do everything as is. But technically, you could change something radically. You could throw yourself off a building while you're driving down the highway. You could turn the wheel and hit the side. You can do crazy things. I could have, when that guy had that knife, I could have charged him to get killed or something like that. You could do anything. Like that's the crazy thing. But you don't experience life like that. You
guys could have become a gang, a little 2-person gang, and you could go around to all the food trucks and been like, "You gotta get out of here."
I could have joined them.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, keep going.
So you're feeling like life is just going along in a track, but Kierkegaard says the quantum of eternity is it's almost like an existential superpositioning. It's a moment when you realize that you have all of these potentials. Your life could go in any direction you want. You could do anything. You could end a relationship. You could end your work. You could kill yourself. You could, do whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like just an infinite variety.
When there is a in the absence of nothing, there is the possibility of anything, and so at any given moment, you could do anything.
Yeah.
To alter.
Yes, and Rick and Morty is a good example of this. So Rick and Morty plays on this kind of quantum of eternity, maybe, because all these multiverses, and they just do crazy things, and something completely unimaginable happens, and it all kind of like Rick and Morty works kind of on the idea of a pure chaos of any possibility can happen. So when you're watching it, you've got no idea where it's going to go.
Yeah, it's so good. It's too good for me to watch. It's one of those. It's flying too close to the sun.
Yeah, it's very like there's is it what they call the cosmic cable or something, interdimensional cable, but it's like a cable channel that has every show that's ever been made in every dimension, and so you find anything.
So good.
Like so House good. Hunter, where they're hunting houses.
Oh, really? Is that one of them? Yeah, I don't remember, but that's.
But it's like anything, just anything can happen.
So good. So it's in. Can I jump in?
Oh yeah, please do.
But if you got more.
Oh well, no, I'll keep adding to it. Okay. Jump in and.
Well, just so I get my bearings, I tend to think of eternity as a never-ending time.
Yes.
And you're talking about eternity being a moment, a singularity of all possibility, which is in contrast to time itself. That makes sense. It's sort of like how people are like, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. Like that makes sense because that's an absence. Like eternity would be an absence of time, not extension of it, because that would be in time. Like that would be an in time definition of eternity. That's where my brain is. But
which, by the way, Hegel calls a bad infinity, which is eternity is simply the movement of time forever, right? So both Kierkegaard and Hegel, they're saying no, that's not eternity. That's a bad infinity. So keep going.
Interesting. Okay, great. I don't know though. I cannot conceptualize the version you're saying.
Yes.
At all. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what it looks like in my brain to imagine a moment of singularity where all things are happening at once.
Yeah, I mean, maybe
it's not entirely true. I have done mushrooms, but with the exception of that, I don't understand entirely.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if you could say the moment before the Big Bang is a type of.
That's what I think. It sounds like a Big Bang. Event.
Yes, or but just pre the Big Bang is potential because space time, is are contained, right?
Yeah.
So space time don't exist outside of that. So, but. The funny thing is, for Kierkegaard, you don't have to be able to conceptualize eternity. In fact, we can't. You're right, we can't conceptualize eternity by definition. We can't. But the reason why Kierkegaard says we're between the two is because he says what we do experience is a quantum, or he calls it an atom of eternity. And what he simply means by that is this moment that breaks into. Because he doesn't like the idea, and physicists don't like this either now, of thinking of the time as past, present, and future. That's a spatiality of time. It doesn't really. Time is just this flow and this flow of entropy. But what we do as human beings is we experience time discretely. We experience the future and the past and the present. And Kierkegaard says the reason why we do that is because something disrupts the flow of time and its eternity. And what he means by that is it's that moment. And I've had this maybe once in my life when I was 17, but maybe little elements of it since then. But a moment when you literally experience the ground beneath you going, and you experience your radical freedom, that you could do so many things, and none of them are guaranteed. There's no guarantee. You have to take full responsibility for your freedom. You have to take responsibility for your fleeing from freedom. You could do anything. And that's what I like to call it the superpositioning of an existential superpositioning.
Yeah.
In superpositioning, you've got all positions are simultaneous until they're crunched down into one location. And it's almost like that. You have to make decisions.
The Heisenberg principle of uncertainty.
Exactly. So you have to make a decision. You have to decide.
Schrodinger's cat. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh yeah, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, where the cat is technically, until you look at the cat, it's neither alive nor dead, or both alive and dead. Yeah.
I think I have a joke from forever ago.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, it was like Schrodinger's cat is it's when you take it's an experiment where you take a cat and you put it in a box and you shut the box, and then the cat can exist in multiple places, but depending on where it is defined by when you open it up and you find out that God isn't real. It was very dumb. It was like one of my first attempts at a stand-up philosophy joke, but anyway, yeah.
I was your biggest fan with your stand-up philosophy jokes, but they probably weren't the most popular.
Yes, biggest fan, not getting
Only
laughs.
fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And thank you. But anyway, so existential superposition, is that what you said?
Yeah, because you see yourself as going like, oh my goodness, I could leave my job, I could change everything, and you experience it for a moment, and you experience the dizziness of that you're not just on tracks, that you're not just going somewhere mindlessly, but you're responsible for what you do and who you are and who you can be. It's this moment of terror.
Yep. It's absolutely exhilarating.
Yeah.
I've been getting back into a little bit of meditation.
Oh, nice.
And I like it a lot. And I haven't done it in a while, but I started doing it because I was just like, there's no reason not to. It's not like I don't, why not? Let's see if I'll revisit it and see if I like it. But in times of meditation, as maybe foo-foo as this sounds, there have been glimpses of that kind of thing when you sort of actually do. I'm not good at it, but there's moments where you feel like oh no, there's a little bit of a roller coaster feeling and it startles me to the point that I sort of snap out of it. But there have been, especially during this quarantine and being in solitude, and combined with for example, in relation to a little bit what we're talking about, the Valley folk obviously is struggling, and the views and all that, and we are at an impasse of going, okay, whatever we're doing right now is not working in terms of getting views that we think our content deserves. So something needs to change, and something needs to be shaken up a little bit. And it's sort of that same, it's a smaller version of that feeling of being like, we can do anything.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's terrifying, because if we do anything, if we just go balls to the wall and make, things and address things the way that we probably want to, there are so many variables that could happen that are unknown. And what we do know is that while we are struggling and suffering, it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't.
Yeah.
And so there is that kind of also that feeling collectively, even though it's in quarantine, of being sort of what's it called, where you're it's a something of riches, you're cursed of riches, or
I know the phrase
it's like that with things. It's like that with things that you could do to change things up, where it's like there's so many options, and you get stuck in this mind frame of going like, we need to stick like this, but the whole human existence is being like remembering that you can do whatever you want. Anyway,
that's a perfect thing what you're describing, which is, I like the phrase like a decentering practice rather than a centering practice. It's what decenters you. It's that experience of, right, we have to change something, things need to be shaken up, and then you go like, well, what's the right way to go? And can you sit down and work it out exactly, and go like, well, not really. You're kind of caught in this absurdity, you're caught in this impossibility, and you have to make a decision.
There's such especially because we were talking about this with the struggles are so zoomed out right now when you look at the fact that there's a global pandemic. So you add that into the mix of also going, we gotta fix this. We gotta fix it now. And that is such a small thing compared to a global thing that's happening, that to do it publicly, it feels insane. It feels like you're like, it almost looks like you're unaware that things are actually falling apart, but that never changes the fact that things can be falling apart internally as well, and you're not looking at that because it's not a big deal. Not that they're falling apart, but that they're struggling. And so it's an impossible scenario. It's an impossible thing to be able to go, oh, this is the right direction.
And in terms of COVID, I think potentially on a world scale this is happening. Like, some people are going, well, does this mean that we need to rethink how we do the economy, or does this rethink how we do politics? Does this rethink? So I think actually, interestingly, this is a moment where this notion of the quantum of eternity is felt by people individually who are like, do I go back to work like after this is over? Do I go back to the way things were? Or do I make big changes in my life? And also politically going like, does this change how we do the economy, how we produce commodities, and how we distribute commodities? So there's a weird way in which I think Kierkegaard is really good for the present moment.
Yeah.
Is that individually people are feeling, oh my goodness, I could change things. Like my life is kind of, without me wanting it, has been thrown up in the air, and now I'm noticing that I've got lots of possibilities.
Yeah.
And then politically, we also are looking at, well, does this shake up the very form of production?
Yeah, isn't it fast? So freaking crazy, man. Like I wouldn't have guessed that it would be the questions that we're asking like that would have happened like 2 months ago. I would have thought, first of all, it would be over by now. I didn't know anything, and also just like the universality or whatever of everyone sort of just questioning these types of things is the most interesting thing to me that I maybe have ever experienced, with the exception of like the only thing I can think of is like 9/11, the way that the reaction to 9/11 and like group events that affect people on a massive scale is so far beyond my understanding. And it's not like I like philosophy and I like getting into it, even though I'm like armchair with it and I don't really know much of it, and I take most of what you say and then I spit it out the wrong way. So there's plenty of people out there who think you have even less of an idea of what you're talking about than you realize, because I'm just butchering your words constantly. But when it comes to that like sociological impact of everything, I'm like just I'm so fat. Like there's all this at 8:00, you know, people do the medical workers
it's
thing.
amazing from here.
I bet downtown. I bet it's crazy, and we can hear it, and it's just so
it was
cool.
For Trump.
Yeah. That's me, just me in my pan, banging my pan. Yeah. But I was like, but I'd like to just like maybe at 7 p.m. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna shout and holler for all of the psychologists and maybe not philosophers, people who are watching this event right now and just like hammering data into like whatever. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with whatever conclusions they're going to come to based on their data, but imagine like 5-10 years from now when we are going to be able to look back on this worldwide event and actually be able to learn things, which is probably what Kierkegaard would, I guess, want to have happen.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't give a crap.
Yeah, he was pretty lunar.
Yeah.
But
he wouldn't even know there's a pandemic going on.
Yeah, that's right. But I think he would. Yeah, like I think he would see this as an opportunity for the increase of anxiety, but the increase of a possibility for change.
Yeah.
Because none of us are going, life is as usual. Like even more than 9/11, because that was an American event. It was a world event, but it wasn't a world event like this, where the everyone's on lockdown around the world.
And there's no face to the enemy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. Well, there is. You just have to make one up and blame somebody. But yeah.
It's the Chinese.
Yeah, Chinese.
But yeah, so it is like a moment in which we're all feeling that moment of what we'd call absurdity. In fact, did we talk about him and Abraham and Isaac? I don't think we did.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, this is very good. So Kierkegaard, he's trying to piss off religious people. He's kind of very religious himself, but he's trying to shake things up in a world where a lot of people consider themselves Christians at the time. And so he does a reading of Abraham and Isaac, and Abraham's called the father of faith. And most people that he knows, would call themselves faithful. So he basically wants to show how crazy Abraham is, and kind of like make you think, do I have the same faith as Abraham? So he does this whole thing where he talks about...
Oh no, do I have the same faith as Abraham? When as a kid you're like, having faith like Abraham. Like, you gotta have faith like Abraham. And Kierkegaard's like, what if you have faith like Abraham?
Yeah.
What's even worse is having faith like Abraham.
Yeah, he wants to make you sweat. So he like beautifully goes like, this is not wise and it's not ethical. He goes up the mountain to kill his kid, right? Because like, you got to realize that, and he really digs into it. And then you go, well, why is he doing this? What's the purpose? What's Kierkegaard trying to do in this book, Fear and Trembling? And one way of reading it is that what he likes about Abraham, because he thinks Abraham is a really good model, is that Abraham was caught between two impossibilities. He was caught between the what could be called the God of natural law, the kind of the idea of you don't kill, you try and do the morally right thing, and the God of exceptionalism, which is this kind of absolute that can kind of like bring you out of ration reason. And he's caught between these two types of God, when he's asked to kill Isaac. And what Abraham does is he both is going to kill his son and believe that his son won't be killed. So Abraham basically, through sheer force of will, is able to hold an absurdity in his psyche.
So he's saying, so in his mind, he's going to go up on that hill,
kill Isaac,
or what's the alternative?
No alternative. He's going to kill Isaac, and Isaac won't be killed.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Like he's going to have such quote unquote faith that he will stab his son to death, and then his son's going to pop back up.
Yeah. So it's like for Kierkegaard.
What a gamble.
Yeah, what a gamble. The thing for Kierkegaard is that it's like a square triangle, but more it's weirdly Abraham symbolically is caught in two absolute alternatives that he can hold together, and Kierkegaard makes a big deal of how this is impossible, but ultimately for him it's kind of like an image of life. It's an image of life in that we all face like the absurdity of existence. We face kind of like the impossibility of acting, and yet the necessity of acting, and faith for him is the ability to affirm the contradiction or the absurdity of existence itself. Ooh. So to act when it's impossible to act decisively when there's no decisive act to make.
Oh, so he wasn't like roasting Abraham.
No, he was.
I thought he was just like reading him for filth.
No, he wanted everybody to read Abraham in such a way that everybody would reject Abraham, and then he'd say, "Yeah, you're rejecting what faith is. Faith is," and this is why.
So we went a step further. That dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a brilliant move. It's like, and then Jean-Paul Sartre used a lot of Kierkegaard to kind of secularize Kierkegaard, which is the ability to embrace the absurdity of existence.
Yeah,
is kind of like what Abraham does. That's what faith is. So.
Yeah, I've never really. I've never thought about the Abraham and Isaac story quite so bluntly, in the sense of being like, the defense of I watched randomly this I don't want to say what it was, but it was a atheism versus theism debate, and they were talking about the Bible, and or Torah or whatever, and one of them was defending the Bible a little bit more. And one of the common defenses of the Bible is like, well, it was written for the time of that culture. Like it was written for that the socioeconomic world. And so when people say, well, what about this verse? It says this. It's like, oh, we have to remember it was a separate time, which is kind of contradictory because you're like, also, though, it's a separate time, so you have to give that caveat, but also it's inerrant and completely perfect, blah, blah. But, if you bring a lot of those stories to modern day and just imagine them, I mean, Abraham, that's a crazy person.
Yeah.
Like, Abraham, if I saw a guy who was like, me and Isaac are going to go on a hike, and he's holding a big knife, and I'm like, what are you doing with the knife? And he's like, I'm going to kill him, but I got such faith that he's going to come back to life because of God. I would be like, I would call the police on this person. So it's a weird.
It is. It's like the opposite of what that person on the video was saying, because the opposite is actually some of these stories were more shocking in the time. It's not that when you put them into their context they become less crazy. It's that actually in their own context, like for example, God dying by being killed on a cross, like
deicide.
That's an absurdist notion at the time. That wasn't like, oh well, at the time everybody would think like that. It's like, no, it's completely crazy. And so someone like Kierkegaard and Hegel, they take that seriously, in that they think there's something really interesting philosophically going on.
Yeah.
So the Abraham and Isaac thing is a good example. Kierkegaard's the founder of existentialism, and he founds it on Abraham.
Yeah.
So it's a weirdly kind of existentialism, very connected to.
Well, you're I mean, one of the first things that caught my attention with you was when you did that talk at like Fuller or something like that. But it was all basically based on the moment during the crucifixion where Jesus says, why, God, have you forsaken me? And I had never, until you brought it up, thought about that in terms of being like, oh yeah, like he is being like, that's not a I was raised to believe that Christ saying that was like a lamenting a rhetorical question or something like that. But when you look at it as in a literal sense, and you look at the idea of like, take him at face value and imagine that, yeah, God is betraying his son, that's a little bit crazier. Like it does make it a little nuttier. Did you say that though? Am I attributing it to something else?
I mean, so yeah, definitely. Like I think I'm very interested, in that cry. That cry is similar to what Kierkegaard does with the Abraham and Isaac, is what Hegel does with that cry. It's like,
what's Hegel? Okay, that you got it from Hegel.
Yeah. So you are kind of working with him. It's like you've got to first of all understand the craziness of it, and then see if it's got anything interesting to say.
Yeah.
And for Kierkegaard, he built an entire philosophy of the absurdity of Abraham and Isaac, which say developed into Jean-Paul Sartre, into Heidegger, and so it kind of became very, very influential.
We're an amazing species, man.
Yeah.
We can just sit around and be like,
You ever think about it this way?
and then somebody can be like, yeah, what about this? And then they become, revered forever.
It gives you some insight into reality in a way you never thought
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. You're like, oh crap, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah.
Do you believe in free will?
Yeah, I mean, and the way I describe it, so the way they talk about it generally, first year philosophy is whenever you choose to, when you came around here to do this podcast, were you determined or did you do it freely? Mm-hmm. And then there's one way of trying to reconcile it, which is freedom is whenever you do what you're going to do, when you want to do what you would have done.
Ooh, I like it.
So there's that's called kind of negative freedom, where if you want to escape from a prison and you can't, you're not free. But if you want to stay in the prison, then you are free.
Yeah.
But I think
that's so funny.
Yeah, so that's the kind of least bad way of trying to reconcile. Except that the better way of thinking about it, I think, is like when Jean-Paul Sartre says we are condemned to freedom. I don't think he's not talking about that we do free acts. Acts are always in the chain of cause and effect. It's that we are freedom. It's not that we do free acts. We are the explosion of freedom in the universe. We are the explosion of chaos in the cosmos, which means
because of consciousness, because of human, because we are the singular blip on the whole thing that's going, me is a thing.
Yes.
And nothing else in the whole world does that.
Yeah.
In the history of time that we know of.
Yeah, self-consciousness, yes, consciousness of its consciousness. Yeah, now, and then maybe there's a few animals that can do it to some extent, but like we're obviously the most self-conscious beings we know. But consciousness is that awareness that you're talking about. That is the result of basically what Kierkegaard's talking about with the Abraham. It's like the coming together of a contradiction in reality itself produces a gap. It produces a lack, and that's all. Self-consciousness is a lack. It's a gap. That results from a non-at-oneness of the universe. So hence we are the universe's chaos expressed at its highest level to date, right?
We're the thing that the universe says, I don't know what happened with that one.
Yeah.
We're the species that the universe as a whole is like, boy, that popped out of nowhere. Should have seen that one coming.
Yeah. We're the mess of the universe to the highest degree.
Yeah.
There's higher to go, but like that we know of. You know,
we're the dirty stepchildren of the universe.
Yeah. Because there is an antagonism in reality, and which is what you see in physics with wave particle duality, and then there's an antagonism in biological reality, which is evolution, which is the non-at-oneness of biological organisms, and then there is the non-at-oneness of consciousness, which is the unconscious. So each of these is like just a development of chaos to a higher level. So I would say that's what I mean by freedom. When I say that we are free, I don't mean we have free acts. I mean that we are free.
We are free.
Yeah,
we are free. Yeah,
nothing you do is free, but you are the explosion of freedom.
In the sense, you're saying that it is freedom to have the knowledge of the contradictions that are inherent in things, whereas if without that freedom, a more enslaved existence would be one in which you are sort of stuck in the present time without any, and your entire existence is only cause and effect. And you are hungry, you eat. Dog hungry, dog get food.
If you're purely in cause and effect, that's where you're enslaved to temporality. Yeah, you're a slave to time if you're a being that purely acts in cause and effect. And then we talked about this, I think, in one of the podcasts where Immanuel Kant talked about how into the world comes this categorical imperative, something that is a demand that says no matter what you want to do, no matter how much you desire to do it, you should not do something. It comes in as a prohibition that's like that basically short circuits temporality, or short circuits time, and that short circuiting is freedom.
It's like you poured a lot into my brain right there, and some of it fell out. It got a little overflowed. But I like. Can you say all of that again?
Yes.
The Immanuel Kant part, because in my dumb brain, I was sitting here going, the difference between me and a fish is that if the fish is how it's a fish a slave and I'm not a slave. The fish is a slave because the fish has to follow the impulses of its biological needs, and it only does that and has absolutely no context with past, present, and future. That's very sad. Me being cool and free, unlike a fish, if I'm hungry, I don't necessarily have to go eat something. I can actually go exercise, or I can go get on the internet. And I was going to do all of those things anyway because of cause and effect, and because I'm at that place due to a billion different factors, but it was going to happen regardless. But the fact that it's not dictated solely by what I need and I'm aware of it is the freedom.
Kind of.
I lost it at the end, didn't I?
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, but that's mostly right. What I want to add is the difference between you and a fish. A lot of differences, but the difference in relation to this is more that a fish has instinct, but you have a perverse instinct.
Hell yeah.
Just you.
And some of them involve fish.
Yeah.
So.
So yeah, a perverse instinct, which is called drive. It's not that you're free to do things a fish isn't. It's that.
Oh my God! Is that why the movie's called Drive?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's partly to do with drive. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That just registered.
Yeah.
God, I'm an idiot. Yeah. Drive, because he's just determined to kill all those people.
Yeah, he's driven, and it's a drive. It's not just a purely, and it's a categorical imperative, not a hypothetical imperative, because he could and probably should walk away, but he.
Yeah, I texted you and Curtis when I was watching with Chris because she kept making fun of it.
I know, I thought it was very funny.
Yeah, every time Ryan Gosling was driving, she wouldn't say anything for the most part, but she would just stop and slowly stare at me. And I would look over and she'd go, "He's doing it. He's driving. Look at that. There he goes again." And then he'd be breaking into the car or whatever, and she's like, What do you think he's gonna do?" "Oh my God, he's gonna drive. Look at him go." And if I had known, ever put it together, then I would have.
You could have answered.
I could have answered, but that wouldn't have gone well. If I'd been like, "Actually, babe, it's driven in a more philosophical sense," I would have not put out that fire. Anyway, sorry.
But that is a great example. That drive is about a kind of a person who is taken out of his embeddedness in the world. And I can't remember why he's doing it or whatever, but he basically goes on this rampage and whatever, he does what he has to do, and it's about drive. So the reason why you're free is not because you can choose whether to have tea or coffee or to eat or not eat. It's that your instinct is so twisted that you're like a short circuit. It's like cause and effect breaks down because it turns in on itself. And because it turns in on itself, it crunches. It's like you are the error in the machine.
Yeah. So it's almost like it's the fact that the turning in on itself sounds like self-sabotage, and it's rather than, if I'm hungry, rather than not eating and going and working out, or not eating and going and getting on the internet, it's more like I'm going to eat, but I'm going to eat the most horrible things that are ultimately damaging to my body. Yeah,
so that's a symptom, and then a symptom is simply the congealment of a contradiction. And that's what Kierkegaard calls spirit. Spirit is the congealment of the contradiction between mind and matter. We are the quantum of eternity is the contradiction between time and eternity.
Yeah, Casino Royale is actually my favorite James Bond movie, but I also like the Quantum of Eternity.
I do like Quantum of Solace, but it's obviously a lot of people don't like it. But I think it's a good one. I think it's
you have
it's the underrated one.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it because I remember seeing it and being like, I don't get it. But
it was written during there was the writer's strike and there were a few problems on set, and so I think it maybe wasn't as much money or effort was put into it. It didn't make as big a splash, but it's very good.
Yeah, because Casino Royale just rebooted the whole
Oh my
thing.
God, what a movie.
I remember seeing them being like, I didn't know James Bond was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was like kind of cheesy, but
I'm so terrified because, as you know, I'm a big fan of James Bond, and I'm worried they're going to make him very uncool in the next one. Like, have you seen the Heineken ad where James Bond is in it? And he's drinking non-alcoholic beer because he's working. I'm going like, oh, and he's driving an electronic car in the movie, and I'm going like, oh, I think I'm just worried about what they're going to make James Bond into. There's something so toxic about him that's good. That
it's a matter of time.
Yeah.
But you know what? They did that with Batman in the 90s. It wasn't under the guise of like political correctness or like progressive whatever, but they went from dark 1989 Burton Batman all the way to Schumacher, and what happens is when you get all the way to that end, you bring in the Nolan, and the Nolan comes in and saves it. So maybe that'll happen with James Bond, where they'll just make him like kind of like wuss, or not at least charmingly
They've got a
gristly.
great director for it. That's the annoying thing, but it's the writers that I'm worried about, because the director, I think, although they had problems with the directors, the first director walked off, and he was a great director. But Sam Mendes? No, it's the guy who did Beasts of All Nations. Did you see that movie?
No.
It's really good. And so
I can't believe. Sorry for the cell phone ring. I can't believe can't remember the last time my phone wasn't on silent.
Anyone's ever phoned you?
Like, this is incredible.
I like
Pete,
how
this is
surprised
incredible. You want to talk about disruptions in time? I have friends, and they need passwords. They'll figure it out. Anyway, yeah. So James Bond, he walked out on set. That's always fun.
He walked. Oh yeah,
the director.
Director, yeah. Oh, did he? Did you? Do you know?
You said that.
Oh, he walked out. I don't know if it was on set, but gave up the project, creative differences, etc., etc.
I'm excited about Matt Reeves, the Matt Reeves Batman.
That happened on that?
No, the Matt Reeves, the Batman that's coming out next year.
I haven't been keeping an eye on that. Is that what's the reports? What's the rumors?
It just sounds insane to me. And at this point, I feel like I'm pretty familiar with the spectrum of how good and bad Batman can be. And it looks like this is going to be on the right side of good, but it looks super dark. It looks like it's going to be very, very dark. So
okay,
I'm a sucker for that 100% of the time when it comes to Batman.
Yeah,
because I grew up watching the '89 and the Batman Returns. And so it's just embedded in my head that Batman is just this like stoic, kind of mildly scary guy. And it just the cast for this one, it's got like Paul Dano. And do you know who Paul Dano is?
I know he's that.
He's a young actor in kind of this younger generation of really good actors that's coming up. And he was like in Prisoners and a few other things, but he's such a great actor. I think he's playing either the Riddler, and then Colin Farrell's playing like the Penguin or something like that.
Oh, so they're having some of those characters. It's always funny.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make those characters seem like dark?
Exactly. Yeah.
when they're kind of absurdist.
Yeah, and grounded in reality, which Nolan I don't think hit the mark totally on that. But anyway, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
So, but it's going to be some time before it comes out, and so let's get back to the discussion in time. Where did we leave off after the
this notion, and it's very hard to pin down, and I because you're asking what is it, why is it that we are free? It's not that we have freedom, but we are free, and one way of just saying that is because the universe is in contradiction, and we are the contradiction expressed. So the unconscious is the contradiction of consciousness. Spirit is the contradiction between mind and matter, and that evolution is the contradiction within biological reality. In mathematics, you've got Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So there basically contradictions appear all over the place. People try and get rid of contradiction all the time. Like, in fact, most analytic philosophy hates contradiction. Says like it's dedicated to getting rid of contradiction.
This is there.
Yeah. If there's a contradiction, it's just a perceived contradiction. But
it's just a problem that is yet to be solved, basically.
Yeah, and that's why, like, actually, if you go back far enough, basically the philosopher who is kind of is where analytic philosophy and continental philosophy are born, is a philosopher Hegel. And before that's Kant, and everybody agrees that Kant's very good. But the analytics really like Kant, and then the continentals really like Hegel, and generally analytic philosophers don't like Hegel. And it's because Hegel argued that contradiction exists at the heart of reality, and you can't get rid of it. And if that's the case, if contradiction exists at the heart of reality, then there is freedom, not in the sense of intentionality wise, but just that
is what,
the contradiction is the kind of the breakdown of cause and effect.
It's why at the heart of the contradiction, at the heart of much comedy is improv, where there's a possibility for an endless possibility of things that can happen. So it creates a very exciting environment for people to watch because you don't know what's going to happen. So there is a sense of freedom and a vicarious enjoyment.
That's very true, because
that was total bullshit, but it sounded good.
It sounded good, and it is, because the improv stuff that I've seen, I know Joe, your friend, my friend as well. I'd like to see Joe more.
I know.
Invite him around.
Me too.
Yeah. So I want to be able to consider him my friend.
Yes.
Is that improv is dialectic. It is about, I say something and then you bounce off and go like to almost an opposite extreme.
Yeah.
And then it bounces, and so it's not about this smooth cause and effect. Like, it's ruptured. But the rupture has to make sense. The rupture has to kind of like come out of what you said, a creative misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's the to play fun with the metaphor. It's like yes and would be like the enlightening awakening point for people when people do improv. It's the first thing you learn about, and yes and is basically taking it's cause and effect in real time. And people who sometimes when they're starting improv think that you're supposed to be like, yes and this, but it is a idea where you affirm what has happened.
It's
and
more
then
like
you
yes,
take it.
no. It's more like or either or. It's
yes.
more
It's like yes and not only that, but also this, and then you just boom, 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 and it's very cool. And it's neat that it's the similarities among all of the things in like biology and philosophy and time, religion. What would be? Is there? I mean, the contradiction at the heart of time. What would that be?
So that for me is right. What does it look like in practice? So the contradiction in time for Kierkegaard, when he says it is, he calls it the atom of eternity. And the reason why he calls it that is because if eternity is every possibility simultaneously in a singularity, then the atom of eternity is when you, in your everyday life, have a moment in which you experience the radical, infinite possibilities of what you can do within the frame of yourself, right?
Yeah.
So it's the moment where you go, and I had this when I was 17, because there was an experience I had where I suddenly was like, I don't need to go to tech, where I was doing computer studies. I don't need to, I don't need to have the stuff that I have. I completely lost interest in everything I was doing, everything I had.
You woke up.
What's that?
You woke up.
It was an experience of waking up, and there was no content. There was no positive. It was a pure negation. It was a pure experience of possibility.
Yeah.
And it's only a moment, but it's a moment that can shake you to the core and put you onto a new track.
I remember my exact moment the first time that ever happened. It was like 4 years ago. And I was walking down, I remember the exact spot in North Hollywood. I was walking by myself. And I don't remember what prompted it. I don't remember what happened. I think it was maybe just like a thought. It was some kind of realization that dawned on me. And it was the first time I ever felt like there was an actual world that I could engage with of my own like accord, basically. And it was like it was a sense of freedom and terror. And I remember it's such a dramatic like image to talk about, but it was like I grabbed a tree and like stopped for a second and just like was in kind of shock and was like, oh, this I don't need it. I can do this, and it was like there, and it wasn't like the sense of, it wasn't a realization of like, oh, here's what I'm gonna do. It was the realization of like, I'm here. This is where I'm at. And it wasn't a good time in my life, but that moment was, I think, some kind of weird shift and turn, whatever.
That's it. That's exactly it. And the reason why that's the contradiction is because for Kierkegaard, you're now no longer in time, you're in temporality, you're in history. So you're in time, yes, of course, like a rock is in time, but now you are experiencing this existential superpositioning. You're experiencing a moment of pure openness to the future, that experience is the contradiction within time.
Ooh, wonderful. Okay, well,
any takeaways?
My takeaway, I love this conversation very much, Pete. It's wonderful to knock one out. Let's do another one in a couple days. But my takeaway is just, man, it's a buckling up. It's a strapping in and being like, all right, let's just freaking make the most of it. I'm in a good place in terms of mental and emotional and creative energy. Not so much in a good place in terms of the grand scheme of things and stresses in other areas, but there is a very nice feeling of what you're talking about right now with the collective anxiety also producing a bit of a excitement about the possibility of every area of life shifting in some way, and slowly, or when this is all done.
Yeah, that's it. Like, potentially we are living, and these happen all the time, but we're living in a moment that is historical in a significant way. It's and historical in the sense of it changes the nature of how we live, and and it's scary. It's just that, like, and you said, it's both terrifying and exhilarating.
Yeah, to go back a little bit to the drive metaphor, which is actually, a lot of people know this. It's not just because he drives a car; it's also because he actually has drive. So if you think about it, put that in your cap. But it's very rare in life to find out and to see firsthand that the free market capitalist system actually is perfect. And this has been that moment, and it's nice to see that people who are trying to alter the free market in some way are realizing how wrong they've been, and how egg on their faces. I was the whole system that we're in right now, and this whole thing, and seeing it is it's like the drive thing, where the system has always not been perfect, and there's always been contradictions in the way our economy is set up, and now people are going, it has failed us, when it was failing us, but now we're seeing all the results of it. And that's similar in my mind to the other things in life, where you wake up and nothing's really changed. It's just your horizon opens up a little bit, and hopefully that's enough to make good change for more people.
That's a great point, because my takeaway then, bouncing off that, is in the kind of Marxist tradition anyway, and by that I mean just him as a philosopher.
You just lost everybody. Everybody clicked out.
Yeah. Well, so many people misunderstand him, like, so, and use him in such kind of adolescent ways. But
Trump?
Yeah. What's that?
You're talking about Trump?
Yeah.
He just misunderstands him.
He just misunderstands Marx.
He didn't say disinfectant. He was kidding. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Is that just exposing the contradiction of a moment is enough to instigate the possibility of change. And this is where it fits with Kierkegaard, is that, say you're in a relationship with someone and you're covering over the contradiction, right? Things are bad, there's affairs happening, but no one's talking about it. It's obvious that things are happening, but no one's talking about it. You can keep going, business as usual, on track. Mm-hmm. But if the contradiction is raised to the surface, it's talked about, it's actually, everything's honestly said, then the relationship can't stay the same. It'll either fall apart or you'll renegotiate something.
Yeah.
But you don't have to predict the future of the relationship. All you have to do is bring the contradiction to the surface. So there's a possibility, I don't think this is necessarily happening, but there's a possibility that the contradictions of present society are being brought to the surface. If they're kept at the surface for long enough, then there will be a change, because all you have to do is bring the contradiction to the surface, and change occurs. Not always for the better, but change occurs. Mm-hmm. That is not dissimilar to what Kierkegaard means by this moment of eternity, this atom of eternity, in that once you experience the contradiction, you realize that life can be different, and change can happen. But when you deny that, when you push it down or press it, everything stays the same.
Would you say, you said that when you bring it to the surface, sometimes, most of the time things get better, but sometimes they don't. Do you think that, or is that sort of where you vamp in there a little bit? Like, in general, I feel like bringing things to the surface is usually the way to go.
Yeah.
But I'm interested, maybe this is a separate episode, but talking about times when repression and stuff is probably good.
yeah, that's the truth. Like, and the reason we do it for a reason. Like, we do repression because we couldn't function otherwise.
It's like, why do alcoholics drink so much? Because it works, man.
Yeah,
it feels fun. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has to be careful. That's why analysts do it so slowly. Because you go like, okay, no, repression's there. Repression is there.
You bring it too fast. It's trauma.
Yeah. It's like, boom, yeah, you're done for. So it's has to be done. I think in the right way. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Pete, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This has
lovely
been
to
wonderful.
be back to do this. And great to chat.
We thank you everybody for watching, and feel free to subscribe to this channel. You can also subscribe to the Fundamentalists on iTunes as well as Spotify. If you'd like to leave us a review on iTunes, that would be super appreciated. Please leave us your comments down below, or tweet at us if you're listening about how you're doing with the whole time situation, and if you're enjoying chats like these and what you would like us to talk about in the future. And please check out reddit.com/r/thefundamentalists, because we didn't know it existed, so we would have paid more attention, and now we know, so we'll pay more attention to it.
We will,
I guess, as long as you guys are cool and nice, which you probably will be. Cool, Pete. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.